Here with the Digital Digest, and today I'm sharing a quick video about why I will not be buying the Samsung Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra in 2024. Now, for those of you that subscribe, you already know I have a great deal of respect for what Samsung has done in the mobile space, and I'm also an avid consumer of their products. In fact, year after year, I will generally make videos about why I am upgrading to one of their respective phones or tablets. That isn't happening this year regarding the Tab S10 Ultra, as I mentioned before. While I love my Fold 6, and many people complained that the changes Samsung made this generation weren't that impressive, I happen to disagree completely. I think that making the phone lighter, changing the form factor, these were critical things in the 6th generation of this device in order to transition it into, well, a more modern form than days past. And the Tab S10 Ultra really, in my opinion, is no exception to that rule. I feel that we've come to a point in the lifespan of mobile OS tablets that in order to really make them, I think, more desirable, more worthy of finding a place in our bag traveling or being used at home, they've got to do a little bit more than what they presently have to offer. I say that because, well, I'm a happy owner of the Tab S9 Ultra, and while it was incredibly expensive, it checked boxes that really no other device on the market could at that time. Fast forward to this year, and even with an $800 trade-in value towards the Tab S10 Ultra at its base 256 gig configuration, I can't find any reason as to why I would want to spend $400 just to stay current. And I say that because the biggest improvement we got out of the brand new offering is a new anti-reflective coating, a slightly improved display. The tablet got a little bit thinner, which I absolutely welcome, but virtually every other element was left as is. Now, I think the biggest blow was Samsung ditching Qualcomm in favor of a MediaTek processor to power this experience. I find that to be a real head-scratcher. Samsung justified it by saying that the reason they went away from Qualcomm's flagship chips was that they were able to work closely with MediaTek to fine-tune the AI experience out of the box. And while that sounds right, for me it doesn't really sound legitimate. And I say that because, well, I just mentioned my Fold 6 before, and what do you think is powering the Fold 6? It's a Qualcomm Snapdragon flagship chip. This phone didn't come out a year ago. It came out not even a half a year ago. So the fact that Samsung is still relying on Qualcomm for all of their flagship devices here in the US, because yes, historically, they didn't necessarily use Qualcomm chips outside of the States, it really does reveal that clearly Samsung is trying to cut their own costs on the Tab lineup. And the only thing that could signal to me is that ahead of this launch for the Tab S10 Ultra, they were very aware that the competition this year was more stiff than ever before. And that's the reason you're looking at other products right now on the table besides my Tab S9 Ultra. But again, to recap, the reasons I won't be purchasing, even at $400 with the trade-in value of my Tab S9 Ultra, I won't be purchasing the 10 Ultra, is because moving from Qualcomm to MediaTek, I really can't find any good reason unless they were going to lower the price, which they did not. In addition to that, not innovating in any way, shape, or form, and really just sticking to that AI is the marketing trend for this generation. I'm sorry, I think it's out of touch with reality. Yes, AI is huge right now. It is more important in many ways than most people can even recognize. But to pretend that that is the only thing, that the only reason that anyone should actually make the upgrade to the new Tab S10 Ultra, which is pretty much the narrative here with the move to the MediaTek chip and why they moved to it, I'm just left kind of flabbergasted that Samsung, who generally is an innovator in this space and is even rumored to be supplying Apple with their first folding iPad displays in the not-so-distant future, where is their foldable? And that's really what this is all about. So we live in a world now where, Lenovo, for a while, has had a foldable computer, 12th gen Intel chip, 32 gigs of RAM under the hood, pen input, and a gorgeous, granted I've got to put it down to do this, 16-inch OLED display. You can't see the fold when it's unfolded. It's just a gorgeous piece of hardware, 60 hertz refresh rate, all of the things you'd expect, Thunderbolt ports. I mean, this thing can do it all. It is a computer. But as soon as Lenovo launches this with one of Intel's Lunar Lake chips, I mean, this is going to have battery life that will exceed what Samsung's Tab lineup is capable of. And it will be a full-blown computer with pen input, with basically every reason as to why never to consider something like an iPad or a Tab S10 Ultra ever again. But let's say foldables are not what you're after. I can tell you, for me personally, that is the innovation that I think Samsung needs to bring to the table in order to make the Tab lineup really, it's a revitalization process. It's getting people like me to see a reason for an upgrade that just wasn't here this year. But all of that aside, there are other options, and that's really part of the problem here. Let's say you want the best of both worlds. A device like this from Lenovo gives you, this is the ThinkBook Hybrid Gen 5, this gives you a 14-inch Android tablet that is the display of this laptop that separates from the keyboard deck, which houses all the internals of a traditional Windows 11 laptop experience. So you've got an Intel chip, its own hard drive, its own RAM, of course, Wi-Fi 6E, all of that stuff. But then independent from that is this flagship Android tablet when they are separated, which is amazing. So you get two for one. It's $2,000, so it is twice the price of a Tab S10 Ultra, but you're getting twice the hardware. Again, you're getting a 14-inch Android tablet, OLED display, pen input, its own processor, its own RAM, and this is a Snapdragon processor, by the way. Granted, it's a year-old flagship chip, but it still is one. 12 gigs of RAM, a 256 gig hard drive, its own battery. It's a totally independent product. And then the beauty of this is that these two devices can actually communicate as well as operate independent from one another. So while you're using the Android tablet, you can have the keyboard deck with all of the PC internals connected to a monitor and use it as a PC still, while someone else is using this, or you're even using the 14-inch Android tablet as another display, another workstation, if you will. You can also use the keyboard deck just like you would here with the Android tablet OS running. So really just flexibility you do not have with a traditional mobile OS tablet. And then you have the Surface Pro, which, of course, since its launch several months ago, I think Samsung saw this coming. It was an equalizer. It meant that mobile OS devices, and I actually talked about this, were no longer going to have the desirability that they once did, because what made this and the iPad unique was that it had great battery life. It was lightweight. Granted, this is a 14.5-inch tablet, so it's not as light as other models that are smaller. They all stay cool and quiet and offer great battery life and really mirror the experience you get with your mobile phone. But when Windows PCs start to hit that mark, which they did now with Intel's Lunar Lake, we have battery life and performance that surpasses what even Qualcomm is able to do with Windows. And of course, it surpasses what Apple and Android manufacturers like Samsung in the tablet space are able to do. I did videos about why I believed that the Surface Pro and the new Qualcomm X Elite chip were signaling the death of mobile OS devices like this. And I think seeing Samsung downgrade the processor for cost-cutting reasons and really offering very little to inspire purchases is a reflection of that. They knew this would be the toughest year ever for them, I believe, to sell the Tab S10 Ultra. In fact, the only thing that it has going for it, when you compare it to Surface Pro products right now, is that the screen is an inch and change larger. But beyond that, every advantage goes to the Windows machine. Yes, content consumption is still superior on an Android tablet in some arenas, but that's really not going to be a reason when people won't have to carry two machines anymore, one for work and one for, of course, play. Now they can have one device do it all and not have to worry about compatibility issues, because Surface Pro with the Qualcomm chip, there were some issues. Obviously, there are still some compatibility problems beyond the translation layer that Microsoft employs, which is phenomenal. But with Lunar Lake, you have native x86 chips now that deliver performance like Qualcomm chips in Android tablets and Apple chips in iPads. So why buy these anymore? unless they are really, really inexpensive. And quite frankly, that's what they need to become. So again, had Samsung had the wherewithal, the mindset, the brains really, to realize that if they were going to do this and go to MediaTek, they should drop the price of this device and just wave the white flag and recognize that they're even making devices now with Lunar Lake that kill this. It's a very good reason. I'm not saying the death of mobile OS tablets is happening tomorrow, but it's begun. That's all I'm going to say. And the fact that the keyboard case for this new tablet is still $350 does not help. This is the first generation of the keyboard tablet cover that was $350, which Samsung threw in at an incredible discount. And I used it with the Tab S10 Ultra as well, because I saw no reason to buy a new $350 case. I was able to pair it with the Spigen half case that you see right here, and it completed the whole package. Was it not the fit and finish of a brand new Samsung flagship? Yeah, but whose fault is that, Samsung? When you're pricing accessories the way that you have been and really not giving anything to us in return, the manufacturer who's famous for doing that is Apple. Last but not least, I have another reason I can't consider the Tab S10 Ultra, which is my acronym. The Asus acronym is, of course, a tablet, but it is a Windows machine. It has an NVIDIA RTX 4070 inside, a 13th gen Intel i9. Now, I'm not going to get the performance, the battery life, and staying cool and quiet like I've been talking about that you get out of mobile OS tablets, or, of course, now with x86 machines running Lunar Lake Silicon from Intel. But this is the type of thing that if I can put aside that I don't have battery life and that I don't have, that the fans are going to kick up, this checks every box of a gaming laptop, and it's a 13.5-inch tablet. So you quickly begin to realize that if you are really shopping, rather than just, I don't want to call it being lazy, but just taking whatever you see in the first ad that comes across your eyeballs, there are so many options to fit literally every consumer's needs these days. Again, whether you want the bleeding edge foldable that likely will be coming soon, I hope, that will replace the Tab S Ultra lineup as the flagship in Samsung's tablet line. I hope that happens. That is coming, I assure you. Even Apple will have it before you know it, a 20-inch foldable. Or, again, maybe you're looking for the 2-in-1. Wish this had Lunar Lake. If it did, remember, the tablet and the laptop has its own battery. It's crazy. And if it had the efficiency of Lunar Lake from Intel, I mean, this is just, there's no reason to talk about other products if you're looking for a true 2-in-1. And then if you're looking for a tablet that does everything, but you're not a road warrior who worries you won't have access to an outlet to recharge, Asus will be refreshing this with brand new hardware, I expect in the first quarter of 25, but this already with a 4070 is just the tablet to rule them all. Literally. I know that if I take this on a trip, it's 2.5 pounds, it has a keyboard, it's very Surface Pro-esque. Granted, the design is very niche, no question about it. Not everyone's going to be in love with it. Even I have had reservations about it. Even has a micro SD card slot on this baby. And this can do it all. I can even do light 4K gaming to a monitor on this. Forget video editing, photo editing, and at the end of the day, it is a tablet. So there are just so many options, and this is why I continue to say that I pondered whether or not I was going to make this video, because generally speaking, I do talk about the value of staying in the upgrade cycle with Samsung, but it's very clear they weren't begging us to get involved in this upgrade cycle. In fact, I don't think they're expecting many people to bite. And if you've been seeing a lot of YouTubers and other reviews praising the Tab S10 Ultra and overlooking that downgrade to a MediaTek chip, and again, I'm not saying the MediaTek processor doesn't do its job. I'm sure the tablet operates just fine. But I'm sorry, when you have a flagship product like this that's over $1,000 that even is $400 after I trade in my Tab S9 Ultra, MediaTek is not what we're expecting, Samsung. Literally no one. So again, while I'm sure it's serviceable and it does the job fine and even excels in a lot of areas, because that is how it's been reviewed, there is no one, I think, who is voluntarily going to hand over their money for MediaTek versus Qualcomm. And this is not because Samsung couldn't put the latest and greatest Qualcomm chip in the Tab S10 Ultra because it would underperform. This is literally a cost-cutting measure, and Samsung could be honest about this. Instead, they've gone the Apple route, which is pretend the downgrade is an upgrade. And this is where you lose me, Samsung. This is where every manufacturer loses me. So while you may be accustomed to channels like mine that have 6 or 7 figure sub counts and I have around 50 million views, some have of course much more, some less, to not be a voice of dissent, I always am going to be truthful and act as a consumer, as I always have been, not just someone who reviews hardware in a journalistic capacity, but I'm a consumer at the end of the day, like all of you. And things that make it to the channel are things I'm interested in and that I think actually warrant their price or are just so unique that there's nothing else like it on the planet. And unfortunately, mobile OS-based tablets from Apple and, of course, from all the other manufacturers in the Android space, they need a new trick up their sleeves. And either that's going to be incredibly aggressive pricing that moves away from this structure or incredibly innovative products that justify the high prices. So it's time for that transition. And as long as Samsung's going to keep making moves like the Tab S10 Ultra, you will not hear me recommending that to anyone. In fact, if you must get an Android tablet this year, I would look for a deal on the Tab S9 Ultra. There's no reason not to go with it. You'll still have plenty of security updates and regular software updates. And quite frankly, as I've made clear through this video and previous ones, you're going to be much better served turning to a Windows-based machine now with touchscreen, maybe hybrid functionality, where it emulates, like the Surface Pro, a traditional tablet, but also, at the end of the day, can do all of the work you need, and it doesn't sacrifice battery life, cooling. It's not going to get loud. It's not going to get hot. So really, ultimately, why would you even bother with these anymore? Especially if you're like me and have a nearly 8-inch tablet in your pocket already with pen input and all of the capability, and even more so because I've got that Qualcomm chip that the Tab S10 Ultra lacks. You tell me, are you sold on AI? I'm not. I think it's a huge gimmick, and it is literally not a reason to be buying any products in 2024. It is marketing at its finest and its worst, in my opinion. So chime in. I want to know, do you plan on upgrading? If so, I really want to know what the alluring feature of the Tab S10 Ultra is versus the previous gen. If you're coming from an older product, again, I argue you're better suited saving money and getting the 9 or the 9 Ultra, or going with something like the latest and greatest Surface Pro at a discount, which they are going to be very soon, I believe heavily discounted for the holiday season. And a much better buy, especially if you go with the entry-level Surface Pro with the IPS display. Thank me later. Even with their expensive accessories, they're generics, and you'll be better served. You'll have a machine that can do a lot more than just be an oversized version of your phone, which there was a time and place for. And those times are going away, in my opinion. Any question or comments, please feel free to post them at that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.